The iPad Air 2022 is simultaneously one of the best devices Apple has ever made, and also one of the most annoying. So I want to share my frustrations and thoughts after a month of use. Now, when the iPad Air was announced back at the Apple event the other month, I shared my feelings about it straight away before even putting my hands on one. And that was that I couldn't believe Apple would put something as amazing as the M1 chip inside a model as cheap as the iPad Air. Of course, it's not the first iPad to have the M1 chip. We've seen this in the Pro range now for some time, but what I couldn't believe even more is that they announced this new edition with the M1 chip and then further announced that they're continuing to cripple iPads with the M1 chip by giving them iOS. Now, it's not that iOS is bad, but I'll come on to this in a bit. Now, I'd hoped that once getting my hands on it, my opinion might change a little bit, but unfortunately, I wasn't wrong. To give you non-Apple guys a brief bit of context, the M1 chip is one of the most incredible things that Apple has ever released. I run my entire studio from an M1 chip, and we're talking about editing hours of 4K footage, and it never drops a beat, but that's only because it's in a Mac. It has the open element that lets me install plugins from anywhere onto a vast variety of full-blown editing suites, something which the iPad just isn't capable of. Sure, individually there are some brilliant apps out there that do a ton of different tasks, and usually excel at them, and there are even a few editing apps that meet some of my pro editing expectations, such as Lumafusion, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. But none of these really come close to the overall experience and flexibility that the pro Apple apps offer on the Mac. And as of right now, the most pro apps that Apple offer on the iPad are things like iMovie and GarageBand, which whilst can do a job, they're definitely not geared towards creators in any way, shape or form. If you ask me, they're focused on a group of people that I don't think exists anymore. They're focused on giving my 80-year-old grandma the ability to create a photo slideshow to show her grandkids, when in reality most 80-year-olds can't even remember their Apple ID or even Wi-Fi passwords. And I would know, I had 10 years of resetting them on nearly a daily basis. The other argument would be that these apps are for kids and new starters. Well, I'm chucking that notion in the bin straight away because kids these days know way more than I did at that age. In fact, they know more about these tools than people like myself now. And I do this for a living. And I think that's because many kids these days want to grow up being creators and streamers and YouTubers and photographers. Certainly the social media culture that we live in has grown that interest in kids. You see it everywhere. A teacher friend of mine said that when the kids in their class were asked what they wanted to be when they grew up, 80% of them said YouTubers, whereas when I was a kid, it was train drivers and policemen. How times have changed. And I think Apple are stuck here with a mentality that's 10 years ago. But my point is this. Why put something as incredible as the M1 chip inside the iPad Air and then not let people make full use of its capabilities? It's like dangling a carrot on a stick. But this is just video editing I'm talking about now. What about gaming? Now, I downloaded and played some of the most graphically intense games for iPad, like Call of Duty Mobile, Battle Prime, and Medieval Total War, although that last one isn't necessarily graphically impressive from a visual perspective. The game still displays thousands of troops on one screen, so it is quite graphics hungry. But overall, from this standpoint, it truly is a very, very impressive device that can handle that level of graphics natively on here. Of course, there's other ways you can play even higher end games through services like Xbox Game Pass and pairing it up to a controller, but that would be cheating because you're streaming it. But again, despite its incredible capabilities and despite these games showcasing a pretty impressive level of graphics, I don't think we're seeing the full potential of its ability. All of these games are not designed to make full use of the chip inside the device. And yes, a few of them have some minimal optimization and even some rudimentary graphic settings that we can increase. But in reality, games on the iOS ecosystem are developed to be accessible across many, many years of releases that support up-to-date versions of iOS. And this list of devices is it varies quite drastically in terms of their capabilities. Pessimistically, this in part is due to the meaningless cycle of updates that we've become accustomed to. Developers won't spend the time getting the most out of a device because it'll be superseded by the next processor in 12 months' time. Yet we'll have the same software capabilities as the previous 6 years of devices. It's not like a console that has somewhat, say, of an 8-year life cycle. Sure, at the beginning we might get games that are cross-generational releases, but after 2 to 3 years, developers are focused on pushing the most they can from the console, whereas with games on iOS devices, it feels like developers are trying to make their games run across a wider platform. In so doing, making devices like the iPad Air with the M1 chip hobbled because of it. In the past, this hasn't meant a great deal, but now with the M1 chip, it's important more than ever to point out that maybe a slight fragmentation and compatibility wouldn't be a bad thing. Simply so that developers can focus on creating apps and games and other things made specifically for the M1 chip's extra power. But as a real test for me to see exactly what it's truly capable of, I thought it would be a good idea to shoot this episode's sponsor completely on the iPad, and not just that, but edit it on the iPad too, something which I've never done before. And here it is. Lockit is perhaps the most interesting app-based service that I've come across because it rewards you by giving you discounts on your insurance for having a smart home. Lockit recognises your efforts to protect your home with smart devices, and they will actually give you a lower price on your home insurance because they take your protective tech into account. They offer buildings and contents insurance, and you can make instant changes to your policy using the Lockit app, including managing add-ons, changing your excess, increasing or decreasing your cover, and even adding more smart devices when you buy them to gain even more discount and reduce your insurance cost even further. The best thing about this is that there's 0 fees for making changes, 0 fees for cancelling, and absolutely none of those forsaken admin fees that we all loathe. It takes as little as 60 seconds to get a quote, so hit the link below and check out how much you could save on your insurance. And if you want to see a more in-depth look at Lockit and see why, in my opinion, they're changing the face of insurance for anyone with a smart home, go and check out my full episode on Lockit, which can also be found at the links below. So I edited this piece using Lumafusion, and in truth the iPad was blindingly fast at handling the footage, which in itself also looks pretty good from the 4K camera, although the mic leaves something to be desired. But even the export was super quick. This is a good opportunity to solidify the point that I made earlier, that Apple has fallen out of touch with creators. Only just a few weeks ago, Apple made a big song and dance press release about iMovie 3.0, bringing with it storyboarding, which is a way of basically getting told how to make a video, and Magic Movie, which is Apple's AI movie making service, which can automatically make a video for you with clips, titles and effects. So I thought it might be funny to see how well it edits the same ad given all the same resources such as audio, clips and logos. And here is how it did. I have no words for how miserable that is. Seriously? Who asked for this? It's as useful to people making videos as a chocolate casserole dish would be to a chef. It literally spoon feeds you with dry, barely warm mashed potato and then wipes up the dribble afterwards. Are you starting to see my point yet? Look, it's not just a lack of decent OS, there's a few other things that I've found to be a little bit of a letdown. The screen, for starters, is just not as good as I'd hoped it would be. I mean, I've been spoilt by the OLED in the iPhone displays for years now, and I've got my hopes up this year in terms of seeing the iPad with an OLED screen, albeit it's likely only going to find its way into the iPad Pro range for the foreseeable future. But still, this hasn't even got mini LED, and at only 264 pixels per inch on a screen this size compared to the iPhone's 460 pixels per inch, It's almost a little blurry. I mean, okay, it's not blurry, and no, I don't need my glasses, but for anyone who's using an iPhone with an OLED display, you're going to notice the difference immediately when using this device. Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit picky now, but I know I've been a bit doom and gloom overall about the iPad Air, but it's not all miserable because it's undeniably an incredible device. Yes, the M1 chip is hindered, but it's still got the M1 chip and it's blindingly fast at anything you throw at it because of that. Not to mention that it's a great size, great design, has all the features that you've come to know and love about the Apple ecosystem. And putting USB-C on this model was the best decision Apple has made in quite some time, because it opens up that connectivity element and it makes it much more than just an internet surfing machine. It makes it into a valuable tool, especially for creative users. And better still, it's immense value for money, starting at only £569. £569 for something that has the same chip as the one inside computers that cost double or more. Not bad indeed. It is an astounding device. Such raw power in a small form factor for a great price. It's unbelievable. I couldn't with a straight face recommend any other tablet for this price point. It's unbeatable for an iPad. And I'm hoping, no, I'm praying to the gods that Apple release something spectacular by way of an OS update for the M1 iPads on June the 6th at WWDC. They've got the chance to do something incredible here and really pull the rabbit out of the hat. I guess only time will tell if the true capability of the iPad Air is realised. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, subscribe and notification bell if you want to see more STU'S reviews, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on the iPad Air. Do you agree with me? Do you not? It doesn't matter, everyone's allowed an opinion. Let's have a good chinwag in the comments. But I'll see you back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.